Hey, Rhonda.
Hey, Dan. Nice to see you. Aren't you retired? What are you doing here?
I am. They're giving me this award at the Simulation Society, so I got to give a talk, and so somebody borrowed a slide of mine, and I thought I'm not sure who it was, so I thought I'd come in and see if I could locate it. You know, it's just a little square slide. So this award thing makes me think of Mick Jagger. You know how people are always confusing me for Mick Jagger, you know?
Oh, boy. Yeah?
Anyways, I saw him a couple of years ago at a concert, and there were like 85,000 people in the audience, and he was the opening act, and he stood up there on the stage, and he looked out, and he peered left, and he peered right, and he says, "Look at all you people. It's incredible. You all came out to see us before we croak." That's what I think of this award. I think they're giving it to me before I croak.
So we wanted to just touch base and make sure that we have all the faculty rostered.
Hey guys.
Hey, Dan. Why are you wearing a scrub top?
So I came in today because, I tried to park in the garage and they wouldn't let me in, even though I have value on my parking pass, so I want to get my money back, And they were doing a scenario and somebody needed some instruction on how to hack the part, so I threw a scrub top on and showed them how to do it. It was, well, a nursing meeting here. Every time I see more than one nurse together, I kind of get agita because I just think of when the Simulation Society first started.
Yeah, I think you've told us this
story.
Well, Chris hasn't heard it yet. So it was 1993, and the Society for Technology and Anesthesia meeting had its theme that year, simulation. And so there were people besides anesthesiologists who came to the meeting, and at the end of the meeting, we sat at a table and discussed the possibility of having a new society dedicated to simulation.
I think it was David Gaba, Bassau Murray,
and Lisa Sins, and David Feinstein, Jeff Takeman, all anesthesiologists. And then there was Bill Dunn, who was an intensivist, and Bernadette Heinrichs. She was a nurse, but a nurse anesthetist, and me. So the meeting went on, and in the middle of the meeting, there were two nurses there. One of them's name was Deborah Spunt, and she said, "Why are we doing this? Because we already started a simulation society.
an Axel.
We should just join together." Well, I think all the physicians in the room were talking a mile a minute and nobody really listened to Deborah, and so we went ahead and formed a new society in spite of what she said, and we named it the Society for Medical Simulation. So the first couple of years of the society, there were hardly any nurses who attended. And so I was the initial president, and this really bothered me because the whole idea was that it be interprofessional and interdisciplinary and interspecialty, and the nurses weren't coming. And so I talked to a few of my nurse friends, and they said, "Well, Dan, it doesn't seem like we're invited. You blew off our society and you named it the Society for Medical Simulation." So over a period of almost a year, I lobbied the board to try to change the name of the society, which eventually we succeeded in doing. I'm really proud of that. It was, of course, renamed the Society for Simulation in Healthcare. I'm proud to say that the Society for Simulation in Healthcare these days, nursing represents more than 50% of the membership. So that's a great thing.
And bringing a woman, and I thought he was great. So I was just really curious how you
Hey,
actually.
Roxanne, Christian. Hey, how you doing?
Dan, what are you doing here? I thought you were retired.
Yeah. I had to pick something up. Christian, you're so lucky to be working with the queen of interprofessional simulation. She has done the best, diverse groups of participants like better than anyone here. It's just unbelievable what she's done. Has she told you the story of the very first interprofessional labor and delivery simulation? We decided that we needed to do an interprofessional simulation involving as many specialties and disciplines as possible. And so we started this OB course and we got everyone involved. So we made up this complicated patient. The patient was in a car accident on her way into the hospital to deliver her term baby and had suffered a head injury. And so we wanted to get neurosurgery involved. Well, we tried, but we couldn't get a neurosurgeon to come to this first course. And so we wound up deciding that I would play a neurosurgeon for this case. And the idea was that we would come to the OR, we would have this lady who needed a C-section immediately and also needed a burr hole because she had bleeding in her brain. And so they needed both at the same time. And so we were going to emphasize the communication between the specialties and also get nursing involved and anesthesia involved in the decision making. We had talked about how we were going to do a C-section with a mannequin, but we really hadn't implemented it. So we had made a skin that we laid over the mannequin that had an incision for a C-section that was Velcroed together for the obstetricians. But the night before, we realized we had no baby to deliver. And so I went home that night. My daughter was at a young age and had dolls at home. And I noticed that there was this one doll kind of sitting in the back of her collection. And I decided if I took it, she wouldn't notice it was missing. It was called Doll Baby. Turned out she did notice. But in any case, I brought this doll in and we just laid it on top of the mannequin, put this skin over it. And when we did the case, the neurosurgeon tried to set up some communication saying, I need to go first. But the obstetricians would have none of it. They had already made the incision, and one of them reached in and grabbed Doll Baby and pulled Doll Baby out, and the head came right off. And the other one looked at him and smiled and said, I think we better call neurosurgery. There I was standing there, and I looked over at the two of them, and as seriously as I could, I said, I just hate when that happens. And that was our first attempt. We got better after.
Hey, Tony and Melissa, how you doing?
Good.
I thought you were retired.
Yeah, what are you doing here?
I came in to see if I could get a free flu shot,
Oh.
and I waited in line and everything, and they said, you're not an employee anymore. I guess I'm going to get the flu. What are you guys working on?
We're perfecting a scenario for some high-stakes testing.
Oh, yeah. We didn't used to do high-stakes testing. When we first started simulation, everyone was afraid if you tested people, they wouldn't come, and that would be the end of simulation. But I had a moment where I had a revelation that wasn't so. So have I ever told you the story about when I did high-stakes testing in Australia? No. So I was in Australia, and I was helping someone who was administering the FLS test, the Fundamentals of Laparoscopic Surgery test. And she said her problem was that she administered the test, but she had to fly all day to get to a site where there was a surgical resident or a surgeon that she had to test, and something would happen, like they wouldn't show up or the equipment wasn't working, and she would waste a whole day. And so I said, well, couldn't you administer the test by teleconferencing? So in those days, teleconferencing was not that easy. You had to use telephone lines and special equipment. So I said, why don't we set up that equipment from one room to another, and we'll get a surgeon to come and do the FLS, and you can see if you can proctor them. And if you can prove that it works from room to room, then it would work from place to place. And she got a surgical resident to agree to come, and just before we were ready to go, the surgeon called and said he was stuck in the operating room, he wouldn't be there. So I said, let's not waste all this effort we've put in. Why don't I be the surgeon and you can test me? I've never done any surgery. I'm pretty clumsy. You can see every mistake that someone would make, and you could tell if you could see that on teleconference. And so we did that, and I passed. And I thought to myself, what a terrible test if I pass knowing nothing. And she said, but we have surgeons who failed the test. And I suddenly realized what a great thing high-stakes testing is, because if you can't do surgery better than Dan Raemer, then you shouldn't really be doing surgery on any living being. So keep up the good work. Let's do some testing.
Good to see you.
Want to know who the players are, of course. Like, who do you need to satisfy?
Robert, how you doing, buddy? Yeah, hey, Layla, Mohammed.
I thought you retired, and I just saw you yesterday.
Yeah, I had to turn in one of the cables on my computer. I forgot to do it, so I thought I'd come in. And you guys are so lucky to be talking to Robert, because he is the person who has spread simulation throughout the world. I mean, the great thing about simulation is that it has blossomed in all parts of the earth. Australia, the Middle East, of course, Europe, Asia, it's just all over. We've been doing instructor courses for years now, and remember the time we did the course in Hong Kong, and you and Walter Epic and Gracing and I did a course the first time in Hong Kong, and we had this long debate about whether you could debrief a case that was done in a different language. We argued for hours about whether it was possible, and I wound up doing it. And you know, I found that actually isn't so difficult, because clinicians act the same pretty much everywhere. That good clinicians take great care of patients, and when they're in a simulation case, they're doing the same appropriate things most of the time. And so without understanding a word they're saying, I'm able to debrief the case. Anyways, sorry to interrupt you guys. Have fun with you. Hello. My pass doesn't work. What's going on? Let me in. Hey, somebody let me in. Where is everybody? Hello?